All right, welcome back to another episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Brady from Seguin PD in Texas. He has 32 years experience in law enforcement. Thank you so much for being here, Chief Brady.
Thanks for having me on your program, Paige.
Of course. I'm really looking forward to it. The conversation that we had offline, it was really apparent that wellness is something that's a priority to you and your organization. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with our listeners. But I was first hoping that you could give us a little bit of background.
In terms of background in health, as we discussed before, I believe there are five pillars of health that I promote to my officers, whether they be new rookies or they be experienced officers here. And basically, we focus on your physical health and your fitness. We focus on your mental health and wellness. We focus on your financial health and financial literacy. We focus on your learning and continuing education in this field. And we also focus on your home life balance. And I think if you have these five pillars and you work on them, and you have to continually work on them, and they're strong, you're going to be successful in this career. You're going to have longevity in this profession. You're going to get more enjoyment. You're going to be better able to serve the community and fulfill our mission. And life isn't perfect. At any time, something could happen to your health. Something could happen with your finances. And if you haven't been working on, I think they all support each other. I think these pillars all support a foundation of
Mhm.
overall wellness. And you're able, if one or two of those pillars are in trouble or crumbling, if you're strong in other areas, it helps support it. And I think if you're weak in these areas, the problems compound. If you have some health problems and then you're having finances on problems on top of that, and you're having relationship problems, it just snowballs. And this is where we see uh, not just police officers, but really anyone. It gets to be too much to deal with. So I think if you try to work on all these and grow all these pillars, is what I refer to them as, you'll have overall better health and be better able to perform this job.
I really like the visualization of the foundation and the pillars supporting that foundation. It's so important in our life that we have a strong foundation that we can work from. And a lot of times, like you said, we neglect certain things in our lives and we start to see kind of cracks in the foundation. And then sometimes we start to see crumbling in that foundation. And so I really like that visual because I think it's something that everyone can kind of picture and really understand. Why is wellness something on a personal level? Why is that important to you? Was this something that has always been a priority, or do you think that this has kind of evolved over time throughout the last 32 years of your career?
I think it's been probably more evolving and just seeing in our career, in our profession, and none of these ideas are mine original. These are just things maybe I kind of put together. But seeing that we have gotten better. When I came on, uh, you know, nobody really talked about financial literacy, and we go out. It might be the first time we had a good paying job, and we get the most expensive vehicle we can get, and we buy a lot of things because we have this money, and we're not putting things away. We don't understand about and the city offered a 457 plan and different things, and we didn't really take advantage of. We didn't know about them. We didn't understand the miracle of compound interest. We didn't understand. Uh, there might be guys that worked out, but we didn't understand that that was important throughout our career. And
Yeah.
I guess the essence is the young us didn't understand there'd be an old us. Uh, but we've gotten better. Like if an officer was involved in a shooting, there would have been he would have been relieved from duty temporarily, and there would have been a meeting with a psychologist, and that's just to check on a box. But there's a lot of other things officers deal with. Seeing, I don't want to get graphic, but horrific things that involve children, whether it's traffic accidents, whether it's just horrendous abuse, seeing the inhumanity to other people that we deal with. And there wasn't necessarily any thought given to that when I was years ago. You just, okay, that call's done, boom, go on to the next one,
Yeah.
and that can take its toll on you. And I think we realize that better now. And so I think we're in a much better place in our profession, but we have to just make sure everyone's okay and that and these things aren't normal and it's okay to not be okay
Right.
when you're dealing with it. And then you have this, and then we all have our family. We got sick parents, and we have marital issues, and we have kids, and all these things, come together. So we have to realize that. And I think our profession is doing. Obviously, we could do better, but we're doing a much better job than we were decades ago. So yeah, it's been an evolution, and so I don't want people to go through the hard lessons some of us learned. There's no reason for that. If we can say here's some things if I knew back in the day would make me better to cope and make me my health better.
Right.
Um, in my physical health, I've had a triple bypass surgery,
Wow.
so I don't know that I'm going to attribute it all to the career, but those are things that I might have been more proactive as a younger officer dealing with various issues.
Well, this is exactly why I started this podcast in the first place. I was having these open conversations with leadership and I was hearing these things of like, maybe if I would have known this earlier, maybe if I would have prioritized this earlier. And I think it's what you said was it was so true to me too. And obviously I'm in a different profession, but I think as a human being, you understand being young and not thinking about the future because you feel like you have so much time. You're like, I feel good now. That's a problem for later. But I also think, to your point, there wasn't as much um, mentorship or conversations or awareness around some of these things. And I think that a lot of people who have been in this career now for a long time have that perspective of, man, like I wish I would have known this. Man, maybe if I did this, it would have helped with this. And I think the more you know and you understand, the less you can unknow. And it almost becomes a responsibility to pass that down to the younger generation. And then I think it's the younger generation's responsibility to listen because, your elders know more than in some cases, and so I think that it's, as we get older, our responsibility to pass those words of wisdom down. But then, anyone who's listening now who is younger, it's important to listen to people because they do have that perspective and they do have that knowledge. And when you said the truck, going and buying the expensive things, I laughed because I've only been in this wellness space for 8 years, and I agree with you. There's been a lot of forward progress in the last 8 years. And early on, I was at a first responder conference, and someone was talking about that. They were doing like a financial keynote. They were talking about financial wellness, and they were like, "Don't go buy the truck. Like, just don't buy the new truck. And if you do have the truck, don't buy the boat to tow behind the truck." And I was like, that's interesting. And I didn't really think much of it. And then I went into the parking lot and it was filled with the same white pickup truck. Like, I'm not a car person, so I don't know what type. It was like a Ford or whatever, but like every truck was the same. And I was like, oh, it's a thing. Like, it's an actual thing. And so, again, I think it's like the more you know, the more you understand, then the more responsibility you have to put things in action.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, that's kind of the stereotypical one, but yeah, you get an officer and they feel they've achieved a certain level of success. They worked hard to become a peace officer, get through the academy, and it's natural to reward yourself. And it's not that we don't want you to have a good vehicle that's safe for you and your family. But the when you start studying, if you get, a $80,000 pickup truck and then you keep trading that in, never pay, you have a continual payment on a depreciating asset, and you would have invested that in your 401 or your 457, whatever plans available to you. I mean, the math, it's easy in a 30-year career on top of your pension to have $1 million on the side. And again, I briefly talked about compounding interest. For those of us at our age, our salary's greater. But if I put saving or if I take a portion of my salary and I put it into an investment, all I'm doing is moving money because it doesn't have time to grow. when you're young is the time to take advantage of that. And it's hard to understand because you think, well, I don't have enough money or I'll do that later. And that's same with everything else, same with the health and
Mm.
all the other aspects of the pill. I'll get to that later. You need to start day one. And if you make these habits, then it's not cumbersome. If you say, you know what, I'm going to spend, 30 minutes every other day in the gym, then it's not a big, burden. But if you wait till you're, oh man, I feel like I'm out of shape and I chase that guy down the alley and I'm out of breath and my chest is hurting and now it's a bigger, undertaking to try to get into shape. So, all these things interplay and that's why I'd like to get these good habits early on for the officers.
Yeah. I think that proactive wellness is always going to be the hardest one. Because again, it's I think human nature when we're like, yeah, like we feel good now, so that's a problem for later. But it
Mm-hmm.
is easier to stay fit, and I'm not just saying physically fit. It's easier to stay physically, mentally, financially fit than it is to get fit, right? So you think about if you're on like a level playing field or if you're like on a level path and you're walking, it's easier to stay on that path. But if you start walking down a hill and then now you have to walk back up that hill, it's harder to walk back up that hill, right? And so I agree with you. I think if early on everyone can create the habits and the consistency, then that makes it easier. And I truly believe that dedication over motivation always wins because there's always life that happens, right? And it's not saying that you're going to be perfect. There's always going to be things that pop up, right? But if you could have some sort of routine that is consistent, no matter how you're feeling, it doesn't matter if you're tired, doesn't matter if you're stressed, like these are non-negotiable things that you do on a consistent basis to keep yourself on that, level path and create that longevity for yourself. And then anyone who has started to walk down that hill a little bit, where you feel like maybe you started to let things go, today's a perfect day to start, that walking up the hill and, one step at a time, baby steps, try to figure out how we can start to create more of that consistency so that you can get back on track.
Yeah, absolutely.
You had told me, and this kind of stuck out to me, and this is in the context of leadership. You said that leadership is more than just supervision. What do you think the definition of leadership or a good leader is?
So lots of people have lots of definitions and in the textbooks, but I think when you see a good leader, you know him or you know her, and it's not just um, giving direction, right, which is important, but it's also getting buy-in from those doing the work to understand the value and the reason for the mission. Basically, getting them to not do something because they're being told, but they do something because they understand it's what's right. It's the mission of the organization. It's a whole host of things. It comprises of mentorship, coaching. If we just want you to come in, ride in your car, answer your calls, um, and again, we're not looking out. We're talking about all the pillars and all the wellness. I'm going to burn that officer out. That officer is going to have bad morale. He's not going to understand. And this generation, more so than ours, they ask why.
Mhm.
And in my day, that would have been seen as a little bit of insubordination. Like, just we told you to do it, do it. And there's nothing wrong with that. If I can't, as a leader, articulate why I'm asking you to do something, then I probably shouldn't be telling you to do it. And there's nothing wrong, and I think our generation has to understand that this is how this new generation is. And there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, I think it's healthy. You should not blindly obey orders. I think history's got a lot of bad examples of that. And if I can't articulate my mission, my vision to them and why we're asking them to do the things they're doing, then I'm probably going down the wrong trail. But I want from me to my command staff, to my supervisors, to my officers who are also leaders, right? I mean, it's not just everyone with the brass on their collar who are bosses. The patrol officer when he shows up on a scene and there's chaos and there's citizens and things are going wrong, they are the leader. So, we have to show that as an example to pass that on to them. They are the calm in the storm. They're the ones that's going to take care of business. I'm not out there on the street. So they are the leaders.
Mhm.
And so we have to treat every employee and give them those leadership skills. And and again, if they don't understand the vision, they don't understand the why, then they're not going to be as capable when they're out there dealing with those circumstances.
Yeah. What you described to me sounds like a partnership. It's everyone working together for the mission or the culture of the organization. How can you improve together? How can you raise the bar and how can you elevate as an organization and as individuals through a partnership? And I really believe two things. When you seek mentorship and coaching in your life, and again, that can come from anybody, like you said, everyone has value. And when you can, as an individual, seek that mentorship and coaching, you're not only improving yourself, but I also think that it impacts your wellness. It helps you to feel more inspired. It helps you to have more of an open mind or to think in different ways because you're being coached by someone else who has different perspectives. So I think that that helps you as an individual. And then when you can help other people and you can pass down your knowledge and you can become the mentor, I also think that that helps with self-enrichment. It feels so good to feel like you're helping other people. And so I would encourage everybody at some point in their life or their career to one, seek out mentorship from other people for self growth and improvement, but also to try to be that for somebody else.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And in our profession, we have um, an FTO program where we have field training officers, and those individuals are super important because
Yeah.
they're setting sort of the right off the beginning, they're molding the what the culture is and how that officer is going to operate because what they learn in the academy and down the road, what maybe some command staff tells them is not going to be as embedded as that officer they sat in the car with and actually observed their example. So we're real particular about who we select to be field training officers. We want our supervisors, our sergeants to have the absolute best training all the way on up to the command staff that we try to send to the FBI National Academy so they get the very best leadership training. And but you're right. You use the word team and we see our department as a team. And uh, and a lot of these younger officers have a lot of technical expertise, particularly when it comes to technology.
Mhm.
For example, I have an officer that he was a pilot and he's taken off. We started our fledgling drone program, and we let him basically oversee that and help develop the policies and you know that anyone who has a skill to offer, we're going to take it regardless of where that comes from, and it's just part of the team effort, like you described.
Yeah. I really want to kind of dissect some of the things that you're doing. And, I know you talked about the five pillars. And one of the things that you said to me, that I thought was really important is you said that the point of wellness is to actually do it, not just talk about it. And, sometimes I think we do get stuck in that kind of phase of talking about things and not actually doing or implementing those things, and you can relate this organizationally, but anyone on a personal level, I do this still. Like I have to catch myself where I'm like, yeah, like I know I should do this. I know I should meal prep or I know I should go work out tomorrow. And then, sometimes you just talk about how you need to do these things and then you never do them. And so I agree with you. I think that it's so important to take action and to actually implement these things into your life. And, of course, what you guys are doing organizationally. I want to outline those five pillars again that you said at the beginning for anyone who doesn't remember, but fitness, right? Physical wellness, mental wellness, financial. You said training and continued education, and home life balance. Those are kind of the five pillars that you focus on organizationally. What are maybe some of the actionable steps and resources that you guys have implemented organizationally that have been successful for you, encompassing maybe some or all of those pillars?
Sure. So on the health and fitness front, you know, I mean, we of course we present information, fitness, nutrition, as do many organizations, but again, we have to implement that. So what we have is we allow officers and civilian employees while on duty some time allotted for them to actually exercise and work out. And we have resources available to put on custom, fitness regimes for them that's personalized to them, and they can take advantage of that on duty. We also have fitness incentives. So we have the Concept 2 rower, and we have basically a matrix of, and it's weighted for your age and your gender and so forth. And you have to hit a certain percentile to pass. And then beyond that, there's different incentives all the way from a day off a year to a full week off. So we offer tangible incentives to try to again steer towards that behavior we want of fitness, and then we offer uh, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and that falls in two pillars: the health and also the training, because these are skills that we believe are useful in the field. And we offer that training, and we also there's a local gym we've partnership with, and officers can go sign in free of charge. The city pays for those sessions. So we work quite aggressively to promote that culture of health. I myself have just taken my road test, and I've gotten 3 days off. I couldn't get a whole week, but the level I hit,
Next time.
I make sure that they see me in the gym using, and we have these nice facilities. And as our city grows, we hope to, in the future, expand those facilities to encompass more equipment and so forth. But so we kind of provide that, and we try to set the example. On the mental health side of things, of course, we have an employee assistance program like many cities do, but we promote, every officer is issued a cell phone, and on that we have there's a Texas peer network that's statewide. It's a state program, and it allows them to have peer-to-peer anonymous contact with somebody in another agency, and just to discuss things. And so we don't yet have our internal peer support team. That's something we're looking at, but I do know sometimes officers would rather not tell their problems to coworkers,
Mm.
whether there's perceived issues about their personal business. Not that there's not value. Sometimes you may feel comfortable with that, but at least with the peer network, it allows them to, talk to somebody in law enforcement that understands what they may be going through, and it's anonymous. They know it won't get back to their chain of command. We have our own department psychologists, well, that we contract. And so we try to, after critical incidents and things that you may not traditionally have thought of as critical, but make sure that the officers are okay, and just reach out to them, and not just our officers but our dispatchers.
Yeah.
Oftentimes they're dealing, you got a panicked mother and her child's not breathing, and they're trying to walk them through that, or there's an officer screaming for backup on the radio and they're doing the dispatching. There's a lot of things they're dealing with, and unlike the officers, they don't always see the finality. Like they don't know how that concluded. So that can be quite stressful. So we want to make sure that all our employees, that we're making sure that their mental health and well-being, and again, the stuff we deal with is not normal, and it's okay not to be okay. And we need to let them know that, like, gosh, I feel maybe something's wrong with me because that call really affected me. And I think just knowing that that's normal is part of the battle. Then you're like, okay, that's normal, and we can deal with that from there. On the financial end, we try to offer various plans, and there's an individual, Nick Doherty. He's the financial cop, and
Mhm.
he puts on seminars throughout the country, but he's Texas based. And I'm going to try to get him over here, but he's got a 3-hour online program that I make all my officers take, and it deals with everything about from wills to benefits to investments to all the various financial things that you're a young person and just getting this job, and you may not have been exposed. Your family may not have talked about finances, and it's important because once you start getting in problems and you start getting in debt and credit issues, or you get to an age where you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm halfway through my career and I haven't saved anything for my retirement, that again goes against one, and now you get stress. So we want to give our officers these financial tools and understanding early on, so they're better prepared. And then if something happens in life that winds up being expensive or if you already understand emergency funds and you already have insurance and you already have life insurance, you don't have to worry about your family and all these different financial concepts. We want to make sure they're prepared for that. On the continuous training, our officers get more training than any department I've ever worked at. We have once a month they have a day because we have the way our schedule works. They have an overlap, so we can bring in the entire half the department
Mm.
every other month, and we have training and we go over. We are blessed to have our own shooting range, so we go over the tactical skills, but also when there's the use of a firearm, it's important that you are on top of your game. But these are rare instances. What you need every day are your communication skills, your de-escalation skills. So we work very hard towards that end as well. We have our own mental health peace officers, and they serve to help train the rest of our staff. And this training, your tactics are continually training, and we want you to continue that throughout your career, just like the fitness. I mean, if you get rusty with your firearm skill, your active countermeasures, or your communication skills, or you're not as well versed on the new laws or new trends, then you're not going to be effective out there. And in fact, you might be dangerous to yourself or your partner. So we want to continually. Plus, I think you get more enjoyment out of the job when hey, there's some new training. Oh, I'm learning about this new technique because we're always improving. The equipment's improving. The case law change. That's the thing about cops. Cops don't like change. I think it's our nature, but our profession is change. Right?
Yeah.
Case law changes, laws change, crime trends, drug trends, they change. Technology. Oh my gosh, that's really changed everybody's fields and types of work. So we want to prepare them for that. And then I think one of the most important aspects is just to try and emphasize a healthy work-life balance. We want you to enjoy. This is a fun job, and we want you to enjoy it, and we want you to get that sense of servant leadership that you're actually making a difference in your community. And we want you to be proud to identify as law enforcement, but we want to be careful that's not your only identity.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that your relationships are strong as much as we can contribute towards that. If you have any faith that you're pursuing that, and you're in that realm, that you have outside interests outside of law enforcement. And I used to joke because you know grown men now they're into gaming and video game. For us, that was something kids did. But you know what? I mean, if that's a healthy stress relief, and I mean it's something you can enjoy outside of the job. I would prefer sports or exercise, but just have some outside activities and have some outside. I want you to bond with your peers and your friends and your coworkers and do things together as a shift, maybe after hours or on your days off. But it's important to have friends and family that are not involved in law enforcement too, so that you're not skewed. You don't see the world in just one way, and you're not in this bubble, right? And we see that in our country is very polarized with, sort of the people on the left talk to the people on the left, the people on the right talk to the people on the right, and you don't interact. If you only talk to cops, I think you have a little more cynical and maybe skewed view. And we'd like to encourage our folks to be more well-rounded. So those are very quick bullet points, if you will, of some of the things we try to promote for that overall wellness.
I love it. One of the things I was thinking about as you were kind of explaining everything is, this idea of trying to empower everyone to be the best versions of themselves. And I think that by focusing on all the different pillars that you just went over, that's what that's doing. It's empowering you to feel better physically and mentally. It's empowering you to have better finances. There is so much stress in this world and in our lives. Why not reduce the stress for yourself? Why not create systems so that, like you said, when you can exhale because you know that you're okay financially, that is a weight off of your shoulder. When you can exhale because you feel really good physically and mentally, that's a weight off the shoulder. When you feel empowered and educated to be the most effective in your career and you have confidence in the way that you operate, it's a weight off of your shoulder. And so, how can we empower people to be the absolute best versions of themselves and create longevity, not just professionally, but also personally? And so, I really appreciate everything that you kind of outlined that were those actionable steps. One of the things that I think maybe people don't realize, and maybe you do, but a lot of agencies around the country still are in infancy stages of wellness programming. They're still trying to figure it out. Like, what are those steps? What are those things that we can do? And so I appreciate you kind of outlining some of those things. And if there's anyone who's listening who is still trying to figure it out, maybe starting with one and building that out and then, going from there. And one of the things that you and I talked about a little bit offline, and I'm really curious about your, kind of opinion on this, but you know, what I see is when it comes to training, you have your annual training that's really normal. You have your firearms training, you have your defensive tactics training, and all of that is kind of expected. Everyone's like, yeah, it's a part of our job training every year. And I know you guys do it a lot more than maybe some other agencies, but usually agencies are doing some sort of training at least once a year, if not quarterly or more. Um, and then we talk about wellness as training. And when we talk about wellness training, it's kind of viewed, I think, as like a nice to have instead of a need to have. And still, in some ways, there's maybe a little bit of stigma around like wellness training. Do you think that there's ever going to be a world where the two of them merge and wellness training is your normal annual training and there's no real separation between the two? It's just what you do on a consistent basis and it's just a part of the job.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to have a crystal ball, but I think that we are moving that direction more so. And I think, you know, today's police leadership understand. So when we go to our conferences and when we go to leadership training and chiefs mandatory chief training that the state of Texas has for us, those concepts are brought up. So those will some of these other fitness and health um, concerns rise to the same level as the shooting and some of the mandatory courses that we have to take for the 40 hours every 2 years. I don't know, but we're getting closer to that point, and
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing. But again, not every agency has a great deal of resources. I've been in much larger departments than I am now, and I've been on a smaller department. And when you're a smaller agency, you don't have necessarily the resources. You don't have a gym. You may not have any money to pay for memberships to things. You may not, your whole thing. You don't have a whole command staff. You may not even have an administrative assistant. And so that leader's dealing with so many things, and sometimes just filling the shifts is their priority. So I think while a lot of this stuff should come down from the agency and the leadership, it may be in some cases that the officers are incumbent to seek out some of these trainings and this wellness on their own.
Yeah.
But hopefully as a profession, we can make that much more of a priority and find ways to accommodate every agency.
Mm. I really like that you brought up the accountability on the individual as well. And I think sometimes we forget that. And I'm guilty of this. I've been in positions where I'm like, well, I can't do this unless someone provides it for me, or, these people aren't providing this, and so
Your health.
therefore I can't. And I think that to your point, yes, of course, like perfect world is that every organization across the country provides all of the resources. But that might not be the reality, for you. And maybe there's something extra that you need or want, and it is still your responsibility as an individual to prioritize yourself and to seek out the resources that are going to help you. And so I think that it's important for us as individuals to take accountability and responsibility for our own wellness. And if there's something that the agency isn't providing you yet, or maybe at all, what are those steps that you can take as an individual to get it done for yourself? So I appreciate that you said that, because I think sometimes we forget that and it's almost like an excuse. Well, they're not providing it for me, and so therefore I can't do it. And that's not necessarily the truth. It's maybe just your responsibility to take it upon yourself to get it done.
Absolutely.
How do you, and I only have two questions left for you, but how do you, and you said this earlier, how do you get buy-in? How do you build that trust? How do you get people to take advantage of these things that you're offering?
Sure. So there's a couple things. One is to set the example yourself. If you want to have a wellness program, you need to show that your leadership is involved in participating. But you also have to have some open dialogue and get so you need to find out what again this generation wants input, and that's fine. So let's find out. You need to meet with your officers. You need to meet with your employees. Find out what their goals are, and you're going to find out in most cases their goals can be best achieved by being healthy and having a harmonious home life and having good finances. Like all of these concepts, and it's not just law enforcement. I think these are true to just about everybody. Whatever your goal is, those pillars are going to help you achieve it, help you have a much more successful and happy and harmonious life.
Mm.
But the way that happens, I had officers. So we have some equipment in our weight room, and somebody says, "Well, I want one of those. What do you the incline?
Hmm.
I don't know what you call those machines, but we don't have that. We got bicycles, we got free weights, we got the row machines, we got various things." And I said, "Well, we got limited space, but I mean, you come to me and you tell me what that costs. If you can say enough other officers would be interested, so we don't buy a piece of equipment for one officer, and so you get that buy, okay, well, now they bought into the health, but here's something I'd like to explore. And we work with them. And so that it's not just us dictating,
Mm.
but we're having a conversation, why the importance of it, we're setting the example, and then we're getting some buy-in.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what we said before about it's a partnership and it's a team effort. I also think, you said this earlier, about now kind of the younger generation wanting to know the why. And of course, you were talking about this kind of in a different context, but I think that if people can identify with why these things are important for them, and that's what you said, having those conversations of what are your goals, maybe what are your professional goals, do you want to advance, do you want like maybe a special assignment, what are your long-term professional goals, and then what are your personal goals, do you have a family, do you want to have a family one day and be able to provide for them, or what does that look like? And then having each individual connect with their own personal why, I think is so important. And I've been asked this question a lot. I actually had someone, it was an agency in Texas, and um someone asked me during like a presentation, they're like, how do you get people to do something that maybe they don't necessarily want to do? And I was like, I don't. Um, and I know that that's maybe not the answer that they were looking for, but of course I followed up with, I personally have never had success telling someone what to do. And of course I'm not chief. You probably have a better better success rate of telling people what to do than I do. But what I find is when you, like you said, when you dictate, when you say like you need to do this, there's that disconnect, right? There's maybe a level of resistance that happens, especially like from my role of saying, hey, you should eat better, or you should work out, or you should do this. And so rather than telling people what to do, I ask people, well, why is it important for you to do these things? And having them have that self-assessment of like, okay, well, it's important for me because I have small kids at home and I want to make sure that I can run around with them and I want to be able to physically do that. There's some people who are maybe more advanced in their career and they're looking at retirement and they're like, well, it's important for me because I have grandbabies at home and I want to crawl around with them, and I want to be here for a long time. And or I want to go fishing, or I want to go on cruises, or whatever that is. Everyone's going to be different. But I think that if everyone can kind of self-assess and understand at this point in time, why is it important for you? And then also understanding that as you advance in your life, sometimes the why changes, and sometimes when you're, a younger officer, it's going to look different than when you're, towards the end of your career. And then that's the motivator to take action for yourself. And so I love that you said that you have that open dialogue. You talk to people, you try to identify what their goals, and then once they connect with those goals and that why, then that creates that buy-in and that engagement.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I like how you put it that your goals will change throughout your life.
Mm,
That's natural, but again, I tie it back to the fitness. Whether you're young and you want to, your whole goal is I want to be a SWAT operator, and I'm into extreme sports or all kinds of I do all kinds of fitness stuff. Well, then it's important to be fit. And
mm,
then if your priorities change, well, now I have kids and grandkids, and I want to spend time. It's still important to be fit. It's still
mm.
important financially. So it's hard for me to imagine any goal you have that all these wellness components don't play into. And
Yeah,
so, if we can make people understand that, like this is important for us as a police agency because we want to take care of. At the end of the day, we want to take care of our community. That's number one. And so if I have the most stable, healthy, happy officers, they're going to serve that community better and they're going to stay. More longevity is less turnaround for us. But they also need to understand it's healthy for them, whatever they choose to do. If they go on and they decide this isn't for them, they're going to have a foundation of wellness that's going to benefit them throughout their life.
100%. My final question, and you've already given so many, great words of advice, but I have to ask the question. What words of wisdom would you share with someone who's earlier in their career? Maybe something you wish you would have known earlier or something that's helped you along the way.
Yeah, I think I've kind of already touched on it, but just to flat out say it, just prepare for a life after this job. And that's not to say, oh gosh, you're old, you're cynical, you're burnt out, and do. I mean, enjoy, cherish. This is a really unique job where you get to, yeah, you see a lot of awful things, but you also see great acts of human kindness. You get to be there. You get to be the first person to calm in the storm. You get to meet a lot of great people, and in our community, we get a lot of great support. So enjoy your career and continue to learn and continue to invest in yourself and learn and enjoy the career, but understand at some point it's going to come to an end. And if your only identity is tied to this job and you've spent your youth and your health and your mental health and you're on your third divorce and your 14th jacked up pickup truck, and then at the end of it you have nothing to show, emotionally, financially, health wise, and it's taken its toll on you, then I think we as a profession have done a disservice. But again, you've done a disservice to yourself. So no, again, the young you needs to know there's going to be an old you, and you want to enjoy because there's you retire, you still have decades to go. We retire a little younger in this profession than others. So you wanna be able to enjoy with your spouse, with your kids, with your grandkids, with your friends, with your hobbies, whatever it is you're going to do in that next chapter. Make sure you've maintained all those wellness components so that you're able to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate you coming on here and talking about everything that you guys are doing. And I will kind of end with this because I liked you said this earlier. You're like it's all about body, mind, and bank account. So I thought that that was a really cute way to kind of segment that out. But I appreciate your time so much. Thank you for being here today.
Appreciate the conversation.
Of course.